Welcome to Alberto's Universe. This is Ascension Chronicles number 8, The Expert, Exploiting Victimhood. Listen to the following quote. Think whether you would trust the person described or not. A short, uncouth figure, stout, unshaven, not over clean, walked in with a frayed notebook under his arm. He was miserably poor. I asked him what he wanted. He said he wanted a pittance to live on so that he might pursue his research. By the way, to add context, this took place in Madras, India in 1911. In part 4, while covering the consciousness level of guilt, I made reference to our victimhood programming. Victimhood is a very important lever and often used button to manipulate our behavior by the control system by those who run our society. Today, I will describe how the concept of the expert exploits victimhood. From an early age, we watched Disney movies where the helpless princess, the victim, needs a knight in shining armor in order to be happy. She needs to be rescued. In the same movies, the main character's mom is always killed right from the start. This brings out deep-seated feelings of fear and abandonment in all of us. Without mom's protection, the child inside is left to be an easy prey, a victim. At school, we find ourselves alone without mom. From our early school years, we are told to trust the teacher. Teachers are not presented as a surrogate mother. No, we know that mom is at home. Instead, teachers are depicted as the experts who know what is best for us. Teachers are the experts who can address any concern, any need we may have. We are told to be obedient to teachers. Teachers stand at the front of the class. They control that of what goes on in the classroom, and are the only people allowed to speak during such class. Children in class speak only when permitted by the teacher. Children who do speak or act naturally during class are labeled as disruptive and are reprimanded. From a systemic perspective, school is a totalitarian regime where the expert, the teacher, prescribes what the children must do during every moment of their day. In essence, the teacher stands in front of the class and claims, "Sit down, shut up, and listen to me. I am the expert." Of course, the teachers do not make such claims overtly, but the effect of their actions certainly sends the same message. And no, I'm not attacking teachers here. Instead, I'm being critical of the way the system works. Because of the pressure placed on teachers by the control system, those refusing to act accordingly will eventually find themselves unemployed. These teachers will be fired for lacking the ability to control their class. Are we then surprised when years later an expert stood in front of TV cameras and told every person around the world to sit down, shut up, and do what he said? The media presented him as an expert. I'm talking about Anthony Fauci, the so-called expert behind the attack on humanity. He who ordered everyone to wear useless face masks and to happily accept being inoculated with a bioweapon. You see, Fauci was deployed by the control system to exploit our victim programming, the same programming they installed in all of us. Fauci was the expert, the savior. Most people do not remember that doctors used to wear normal clothes, and that one day all physicians were forced to start wearing lab coats. That is because scientists wear lab coats while they do their scientific research. You see, lab coats became the normal attire for physicians, all because the modern medical system needed to create the image that science was behind what they did. In a way, the lab coat created the illusion that doctors were scientists. Never mind that medical students' curriculums looked nothing like those from engineering students. Medical students have zero need for advanced math. Meanwhile, engineering students must use advanced math for most of their classes. Many engineering graduates will go on to having real scientific careers. Doctors, on the other hand, only pretend to do science, which is more than enough for the control system. And here, just a little parenthesis. I don't pick on doctors, I pick again on the system. Those in control know that the average person will never question authority and will follow directives by those who seem like experts. Think about it. The control system manufactures experts all the time. They take an average teenager. They tell the teenager what to say to their cameras. The control system controls the media. They give the teenager stage time during one of their United Nations conventions. They own the United Nations. They then give said teenager a Nobel Prize. They control all Nobel Prize awards. Since people believe those who write books about those who don't, the teenager is asked to sit with a ghostwriter paid by her handlers to publish a book. Authorship credit for the book goes to the teenager, even when she did none of the writing. Next, their universities give honorary degrees to the teenager. They control all the universities. Finally, their Wikipedia waxes poetic about the brilliance of their newly fabricated star expert. They own Wikipedia. This is how the control system created Greta Thunberg, their manufactured climate expert. Know that she is the daughter of two entertainers. They control all entertainment. Previous to the present environmental agenda, science books described carbon as the essential element for life. Today, Greta and her handlers want us to believe that carbon represents death. Greta is being used to shame us into paying taxes for carbon. She speaks with authority. She is, after all, the expert. That such authority or expertise are fake is irrelevant. 80% of the population can't tell a real expert from a manufactured one. As crazy as all this sounds, most people blindly obey. Most believe that doctors are expert scientists. Most believe that Greta is a climate expert. The programming of our mind and soul runs very deep indeed. For our ascension, we need to face such programs, all of them. We need to come to terms with the fact that we have been manipulated into feeling like victims who need their fake experts in order to survive. The control system creates the disease, victimhood. They then create the cure, the expert. They exploit our fear programming. Still, a higher consciousness means having the knowing that all such programs do not serve us. We know that the universe provides everything we need. We know that there is no higher expert than the Akashic records, than all the information already stored by the universe. We will no longer be manipulated by the need for expert guidance. We will use our intuitive abilities instead. At this moment, let us go back to the beginning of this presentation. Let us look at the opening question. I asked whether you would trust the person described. Would you trust a short, uncouth figure, stout, unshaven, not overly clean, walked in with a frayed notebook under his arm? He was miserably poor. This is how, and I may butcher the name, Ramachandra Rao, the founder of the Indian Mathematical Society, this is how he described Srinivasa Ramanujan. If you happen to be unsure who Ramanujan was, don't worry. Ramanujan never looked like any kind of expert. If anything, his appearance inspired distrust. This is because our society and our programming has made us superficial. We focus on appearance. Ramanujan was poor. He was on his early 20s. He had just failed the university entry exam. But if we ignore societal programs and tune instead into his emotional state, we would see that Ramanujan was full of love and joy. Ramanujan loved math. Over every other aspect of his life, he solved some of the most difficult problems until that time, mathematical problems. Because of his dedication and commitment, and despite the lack of resources, Ramanujan is among the 10 most important mathematicians in history. All incredible for a person who was self-taught. To this day, his work is still being studied. People are still trying to understand him. Without formal education, Ramanujan developed his own nomenclature, his own way to write mathematical equations. At first, academia refused to see his work as important. Ramanujan broke through all barriers set by the control system. In a nutshell, an uneducated man, a person without academic certifications or diplomas, Someone without any of the accolades by news media, government, or those in control. Ramanujan became a real expert. In a world of Kardashian fame, where the control system fabricates those who we must obey, Ramanujan serves as a reminder of what is natural, of what being human is all about. Humans are born connected to the universe. Humans have natural access to any information, anywhere, and at any time. All we need is to find love and joy in what we do. Ramanujan had zero interest in material things. He even placed food as a secondary need. To him, his notebook full of mathematical exercises was all he needed in life. He was enamored of what he did. Time disappeared while he worked. Let us remember that we already discussed about how the theory of relativity demonstrated that those in a higher energy state, in a high consciousness, experience time differently than the rest of people. Could we say that Ramanujan was being divinely inspired to find complex mathematical solutions? Could we say that the whole thing was magical? That it was a miracle? Again, remember that a high consciousness person lives in a world of daily miracles. While most would find it difficult to discern the difference between divine inspiration and our own ideas, Ramanujan serves as confirmation that all answers to our questions can be found within. The control system would want us to believe that Ramanujan was some kind of genius, in that we are not. But the truth is that genius resides in the neocortex, while intuitive abilities live in the limbic system. In part 7, I went deep into explaining the difference between these two areas of the brain. For now, let me assure you that intuition is available to all of us, and not just a selective few. I am thus claiming that you too can become an expert at any subject, no matter how complex or sophisticated it may be. Like Ramanujan, you will not need academic access. Instead, you just need to work on your connection to the universe. Here again is where meditation comes in handy. Meditation quiets our programmed mind and lets us listen to the universe. I find this to be very important for you and for me, because I do not believe in the need for experts. I never want to be seen as a guru as I share my spiritual insights. When someone introduces themselves as an expert, their energy immediately begins to tap into our programming. It indirectly affects our free will, whether intended or not. And I want to respect everybody's free will. I remember listening to a spiritual channel on YouTube, or at least I thought it was spiritual at the time. The channel had a guest who claimed to be the reincarnation of Jesus. That announcement made me freeze. Think about it. Who wouldn't listen to Jesus? Who would not follow his advice? In an instant, the guest went from being an unknown person to the most recognizable being in the history of the planet. Once there, he could easily claim superiority over all of us. He could easily coerce anyone. When talking about consciousness, and the consciousness levels during part 6, I suggested to stay away from coercion as a way to help raise your energy. So, with this in consideration, would the real Jesus, a person of the highest consciousness, would Jesus force anyone into doing anything? The answer is a clear no. Jesus would not manipulate anybody. And for the same reason, he would not claim to be his reincarnation. This is a very important point for us. This is why my profile on this webpage provides no credentials to my scientific expertise. Yes, I had a professional career using what we know as the laws of physics. Still, feel free to doubt any and all of what I say. I would be happiest instead if I could inspire you to look within, if I could help you in your path to a higher consciousness. Develop your own intuitive compass. Be like Ramanujan. In my case, I wrote a complete book after receiving unexpected downloads, after connecting to the universe, following my greatest joy. Because I was not ready to trust what came from the universe, the initial information came within scientific subjects where I had previous interest, but which required me to find confirmation. They felt like new ideas, in essence. To confirm the veracity of the information, I looked into published, peer-reviewed scientific work. To my surprise, all checked out fine. I found robust scientific support for these new ideas, for these inspirations. Then came downloads on areas where I had no previous interest or knowledge. Things like the probability of a person getting cancer had never been in my conscious radar. Thankfully, I was once again able to verify that the information I had received was correct. From that second wave of downloads, I devised a mathematical interpretation of cancer probabilities and found that the mathematical predictions were quite accurate. For example, I took 2 studies that looked at cancer cases in 2 work environments. One study looked at engineers at a nuclear power plant. The second looked at flight attendants. My formula predicted that flight attendants should have a higher incidence of cancer based on exposure than power plant engineers. The studies demonstrated this to be correct. Interestingly, the tight restrictions on the amount of airtime allowed for flight attendants demonstrates to me that the people in control of air travel know the same information as I had just uncovered. Getting back to the downloads, once I learned to trust information, which was a very key moment, once I learned to trust the universe, I received downloads on subjects in which I had no previous interest and for which there was no scientific evidence available. Part 8, for example, covering long-term memory, was one of the subjects from this 3rd stage of downloads. Since that day, I am able to get answers to any question I ask. The only caveat is that the universe will never reveal any information for which we are not ready. So, since we are here to have an experience, answers for the way the movie ends or what comes next are not allowed. Such answers would destroy the purpose of having the experience in the first place. Still, we can expect to get answers to almost anything. All that is needed is a quiet mind and a heart full of love and joy. Meditate as much as you can. Train yourself to be always alert for the universe's messages. I suggest to keep an eye on your programming. Work to clear all programs. Ensure that programs do not get in the way of your energetic state. For example, many people pray when in fear. They ask God to keep them from harm. They pray from an energy state of having self-pity. They feel to be victims, or they could be in a state of anger. Fear, harm, self-pity, victimhood, all energies that are low and which block us from establishing a conversation with our higher self, with our spiritual advisors, with God, and with the universe. Remember part 4 and part 6. We know that Ascension takes us from a view of the world where things, good and bad, happen to us, where all solutions to our problems are external. Then, as we raise our consciousness, we find that we are the creators of all that happens in our lives. We begin to see how all solutions are internal. Through our ascension, we find that we do not need experts. We know now that all expertise needed are accessible by looking inwardly. Experts are external, expertise are internal. Experts were needed while we lived within the control system within a low consciousness state. But now we only need ourselves, our intuition, our connection to the universe and to God. Meditate as often as possible. Always follow your greater joy. Love unconditionally. Embrace every aspect of your experience. Then pay attention as all answers come your way. Thank you.